When a young girl walked into a small-town clinic with her father, something didn't feel right. The way she wouldn't make eye contact, how she trembled in her seat. At first, everyone assumed it was just normal nervousness about seeing the doctor. But when the physician ran an ultrasound, what appeared on that screen made her blood run cold and sent her into immediate action. The golden hour was settling over Asheville, a picturesque mountain town nestled in North Carolina's Blue Ridge Mountains. Dr. Sarah Grayson checked the time as she stepped out of her examination room, drying her hands with a fresh white towel. At 52, she had built a reputation as a dependable family physician in this tight-knit community, and her independent practice, Blue Ridge Family Clinic, had flourished through patient referrals over 6 years. "Janet," Dr. Grayson called, out, walking toward the nursing station while holding up a pair of reading glasses. "It appears Mr. Parker forgot these." "I'll call him right away," Janet responded, carefully placing the glasses in their lost-and-found container. Dr. Grayson adjusted her white coat and headed back down the corridor toward the patient rooms. As she walked past the entrance to the waiting room, she instinctively scanned the area and suddenly stopped short. Tucked away in the corner, seemingly trying to blend into the wall, sat a heavy-set man wearing a plaid shirt. Next to him was a small girl practically drowning in an oversized gray hoodie. The man's posture immediately caught her attention. Legs sprawled apart, arms rigid against his chair, eyes constantly shifting with barely concealed irritation. The girl was completely still, except for the anxious wringing of her hands inside her sleeves. Her eyes remained fixed on the floor. An uncomfortable feeling crept up Dr. Grayson's spine. She watched for a moment longer as the man shifted restlessly, his boot tapping rapidly against the tile floor, occasionally leaning toward the girl, to whisper something inaudible that made her shrink deeper into her hoodie. Then it clicked. "David," Dr. Grayson called out, hiding her growing concern behind a warm, professional smile as she approached. "David Mullen, correct? I wasn't expecting to see you today." David jumped up so suddenly that his chair scraped loudly across the floor. His smile looked forced, his handshake clammy and too eager. "Hey there, Doc Grayson. Yeah, we decided to stop by without an appointment. Maya hasn't been feeling well." He gestured toward the girl, but the movement was aggressive, more like pushing a box than introducing a child. Dr. Grayson smiled kindly at Maya. "You must be Maya. I believe I've noticed you around town before." Maya barely nodded, still not looking up. "Well then," Dr. Grayson said, checking her clipboard, "we'll see you both in just a moment. I need to finish some documentation first." As she turned to walk away, she glimpsed David whispering harshly in Maya's ear, his grip tightening on her small shoulder before quickly letting go when he noticed her looking back. Something was definitely off. At the nursing station, Janet approached, her with obvious concern. "Sarah," she whispered urgently, "that man makes me uncomfortable. When I checked Maya's vital signs, he wouldn't allow her to answer anything. Every single question, even basic things like her birthday, he responded for her." Dr. Grayson nodded. Grimly, "What about Maya?" She didn't speak at all. Janet shook her head. "And she was shaking the entire time." Dr. Grayson gripped her clipboard tighter. "Understood," she said seriously. "I'll proceed carefully." She reviewed Maya's intake information: ongoing nausea, vomiting, exhaustion, stomach pain. "No pediatrician. Listed. No previous hospital records." Another warning sign. A few minutes later, examination room 3 opened. David pushed Maya forward with a firm hand between her shoulder blades, directing her toward the exam table like he was herding livestock. "Appreciate you fitting us in," David said quickly, his voice artificially cheerful. He kept glancing toward the hallway as if calculating an escape route. "Not a problem," Dr. Grayson replied calmly, settling onto her stool. She intentionally positioned herself between Maya and David. "So Maya," she began gently, "can you describe what you've been experiencing?" David immediately interrupted. "She's been throwing up every morning, can't hold down any food, exhausted constantly. We figured maybe it's the flu or something similar." Dr. Grayson focused directly on Maya. "Sweetheart, does that sound accurate to you?" Maya started to open her mouth, but David's sharp voice cut through again. "Going on about 3 months now, maybe longer. Hard to keep track with children." Maya's fingers clutched the bottom of her sweatshirt, stretching it tight with silent stress. Dr. Grayson glanced briefly at David, observing how he perched on the chair's edge, every muscle tense. "Maya," she said carefully, "at our clinic we typically spend a few minutes alone with our teenage patients. Private questions. Completely standard procedure." David tensed immediately, his hand jerking at his side. "Is that really required?" he said harshly. "She's only a child. I can provide all the information you need." Dr. Grayson smiled politely, masking her growing alarm. "It's our standard protocol. Just a few questions. 5 minutes maximum." David's jaw clenched furiously. His nostrils flared, but after a long, simmering pause, he grunted and stood up from his chair. "Fine," he spat, the word coming out like an accusation. He stomped toward the door, but not before giving Maya a look that made her physically recoil. When the door clicked shut, the silence felt fragile. Dr. Grayson moved her stool closer to Maya, softening her tone. "You're completely safe here, Maya. No one is going to harm you. Can you explain what's been making you feel so unwell?" Tears welled up in Maya's brown eyes, but she managed a broken whisper. "My stomach really hurts, and sometimes I feel like I might pass out." Dr. Grayson nodded encouragingly. "Thank you for sharing that with me. That shows real courage." She paused thoughtfully. "Would you be comfortable if we performed an ultrasound? It's simply to look inside and make sure everything is okay." Maya nodded almost invisibly. Janet quietly returned, helping Maya onto the table and gently lifting her sweatshirt just enough to expose her abdomen. Dr. Grayson activated the ultrasound machine, applied warm gel to the probe, and pressed it softly against Maya's stomach. The screen came to life. Dr. Grayson leaned forward, and her heart nearly stopped. There, clearly visible, was the fuzzy outline of a small, underdeveloped fetus, approximately 28 weeks along, possibly more. She adjusted the probe, her jaw tightening. The baby's measurements were dangerously small, and the heartbeat was weak and erratic. Next to her, Janet gasped and covered her mouth, eyes widening in shock. "Maya," Dr. Grayson said softly, maintaining a steady voice despite the panic rising inside her. "Sweetheart, do you know that you're pregnant?" Maya's lower lip trembled, a tear rolled down her cheek as she nodded. Outside, heavy footsteps echoed loudly in the hallway. David's voice carried harshly through the thin walls, angry and impatient. "What's taking so long? We don't have all evening. Hurry this up." Dr. Grayson exchanged glances with Janet, who nodded grimly. They both understood now. Something was terribly wrong, and they needed to act immediately. Dr. Grayson quickly cleaned the gel from Maya's stomach with a soft towel, her mind racing. Every instinct developed over decades of medical practice told her that Maya was in danger. She kept her voice calm as she said, "Maya, sweetheart, you and your baby are at risk. You need to get to the hospital immediately. They have specialists who can properly care for both of you." Maya's hand shook as she gripped the hem of her sweatshirt, nodding so slightly it was barely noticeable. Outside, the pacing and angry muttering intensified. David's footsteps thundered past the door again, then stopped as if he were pressing his ear to listen. Dr. Grayson stood and whispered, "I'm going to tell your father that I need a few minutes to prepare some documentation. While I do that, I want you to remain calm. I'll ensure you get the help you need. Can you trust me?" Maya wiped her tears and gave a tiny nod. Taking a deep breath, Dr. Grayson cracked the door open. David was right there, his face inches from the doorframe, his eyes sharp with suspicion. "Is everything okay in there?" he demanded, voice low and threatening. "Just finishing up," Dr. Grayson said smoothly, stepping out and pulling the door nearly closed behind her. She lowered her voice. "David, Maya is somewhat dehydrated. I'm going to get her a nutritional supplement and prepare some paperwork for you to sign. It'll just take a few minutes. Please have a seat." David's gaze darted toward the door as if he didn't trust what was happening behind it. He shifted nervously, crossing his arms over his chest. "We don't have all night, Doc." "She's fine, probably. Just a stomach bug." His tone was dismissive, but the way he kept looking over his shoulder told Dr. Grayson he was anxious. "Good," she thought grimly. He should be worried. Moving quickly, Dr. Grayson walked to the front desk where Janet was pretending to organize paperwork. In a hushed voice, she said, "Call 911. Tell them we have a high-risk domestic abuse situation involving a pregnant minor. Tell them to arrive. Silently. No sirens. Have them use the back entrance. We need to keep her here until they get here." Janet's face went pale, but she nodded, reaching for the phone with steady hands. Dr. Grayson scribbled something on a sticky note and handed it to Janet. "Asheville CPS. Contact them as well." Without waiting for a response, she headed back, toward examination room 3. David was now standing directly outside the door, arms folded, a scowl settling across his face as his boots tapped anxiously on the tile floor. As Dr. Grayson approached, he stiffened. "Can we go now?" he snapped. "Doctor," Grayson forced herself to smile. "Almost finished. I just need Maya to drink something and rest a few more minutes. I'm worried about her blood pressure." She opened the door just wide enough to slip inside, closing it firmly behind her. Inside, Maya was sitting nervously on the edge of the exam table. Dr. Grayson knelt in front of her, taking her hands gently. "Listen, Maya, help is coming. You're incredibly brave. Just a few more minutes, okay? I need you to stay calm no matter what happens." Maya's eyes widened and she squeezed Dr. Grayson's hands tightly in return. Outside, David's pacing resumed, heavier now, more agitated. Every few seconds he would rap his knuckles against the door impatiently. The tension in the air was almost suffocating. A soft chime came from the hallway. The front door alert muted as paramedics and 2 police officers quietly entered the clinic. Dr. Grayson heard Janet's calm voice greeting them, giving quiet directions. One of the officers, a tall woman with a badge reading Officer Riley, appeared outside the exam room door. Dr. Grayson opened it just enough to meet her eyes. "It's her," she whispered. "The man is right outside this door. Be careful. He's unstable." Officer Riley nodded grimly and stepped back. David must have sensed something because he called through the door, his voice sharper now. "Doc, time's up. We're leaving." Dr. Grayson opened the door a few inches and said calmly, "David, I need you to step back so we can bring some fluids for Maya." David stepped forward instead, trying to force his way inside, but Officer Riley and her partner were already moving. "Sir, we need to speak with you," Officer Riley said firmly, blocking his path. David's eyes narrowed. "What's this about?" he growled. "Who are you people?" "We're with the Asheville Police Department," Riley said evenly. "We need you to come with us to answer some questions." David's entire demeanor shifted instantly from uneasy to combative, his fists clenched at his sides. He looked past Riley into the room, eyes locking on Maya, who instinctively pressed back against the wall. "You called them?" he roared, trying to push past the officers. There was a struggle, chairs overturned. David swung wildly, striking Riley's partner on the arm. Within seconds, both officers had him on the ground, handcuffed, his face pressed against the cool linoleum floor. He thrashed and shouted obscenities, but the waiting area was empty except for Janet and the paramedics. No witnesses, except those who needed to be there. Inside the room, Maya flinched at every sound, trembling violently. Dr. Grayson knelt beside her again. "It's over, Maya. You're safe now. I promise you." Maya sobbed then, deep shuddering breaths that shook her small frame. Dr. Grayson embraced her carefully, mindful of her pregnancy, whispering reassurances, until Maya's breathing steadied somewhat. The paramedics entered moments later with a stretcher. "We'll take care of everything from here, Doctor," one of them said gently. Dr. Grayson nodded but stayed close, explaining to Maya every step as they helped her onto the stretcher and secured her safely. They wrapped a light blanket around her frail body and wheeled her toward the waiting ambulance at the back entrance, away from the small crowd of curious onlookers that had begun to gather outside the clinic's front windows. As the paramedics loaded Maya into the ambulance, Dr. Grayson climbed inside to sit beside her, refusing to leave the girl's side. Officer Riley approached. "We'll meet you at the hospital to begin taking her statement," she said. "We've already contacted Child Protective Services. They'll be there too." Dr. Grayson nodded her thanks, her hand resting lightly on Maya's shoulder as the ambulance doors closed and the vehicle pulled away into the night. Maya lay silent for a long time, her wide eyes staring up at the white ceiling of the ambulance. Finally, in a small, broken voice, she whispered, "Thank you." Dr. Grayson squeezed her shoulder gently. "You did the hardest part, Maya. You reached out. You asked for help. That takes incredible courage." A tear slid down Maya's cheek, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was relief. As the ambulance raced toward Asheville Memorial Hospital, Dr. Grayson silently promised to do everything in her power to ensure that Maya and her unborn baby would finally have the future they deserved. No more fear, no more hiding. They had a challenging road ahead, but for the first time, they wouldn't have to face it alone. The emergency room buzzed with activity as Dr. Grayson followed the stretcher through the automatic doors of Asheville Memorial Hospital. Nurses and orderlies surrounded them, evaluating Maya with efficient urgency. Dr. Grayson stayed close, answering rapid-fire questions from the attending physician, Dr. Elena Morales, a no-nonsense obstetrician specializing in high-risk pregnancies. 14 years old, approximately 28 weeks pregnant, Dr. Grayson summarized quickly, detected intrauterine growth restriction and irregular fetal heartbeat, possible long-term malnutrition, no prenatal care until today. History of domestic abuse suspected, CPS and APD already involved. Dr. Morales nodded sharply, taking over, as the team wheeled Maya into an examination room designed for obstetric emergencies. Dr. Grayson hesitated at the doorway, but Maya's eyes locked onto hers, pleading silently. Without a word, Dr. Morales motioned her inside. They gently transferred Maya onto a hospital bed, attaching monitors to her belly, checking the baby's vitals, and placing an IV in her arm for hydration and nutrient support. The steady beep-beep of the fetal monitor filled the room, each irregular skip or flutter tightening the knot in Dr. Grayson's chest. She stood near Maya's head, whispering soft encouragements while the hospital team worked. Maya's small hand clutched the sleeve of her coat, holding on like a lifeline. After what felt like an eternity, Dr. Morales stepped back and gave a measured nod. "Heartbeat still irregular, but no immediate signs of distress," she reported. "We'll begin steroid injections to accelerate fetal lung development. She'll remain under close observation for the next 48 hours. Relief flooded Dr. Grayson so intensely that she had to steady herself against the bed rail. Maya was safe for now. A knock sounded at the door. It was Officer Riley, accompanied by a woman with kind eyes and a clipboard bearing the CPS logo. "May we come in?" Riley asked. Dr. Morales nodded. Maya tensed visibly at the sight of new faces, so Dr. Grayson squeezed her hand gently. "These people are here to help, Maya. They're going to make sure you're safe from now on." After a moment, Maya nodded hesitantly. Officer Riley knelt beside the bed so she could meet Maya's gaze without towering over her. "Maya, sweetheart, I know this is frightening, but we need to understand what happened so we can protect you properly. Would you be willing to talk to us for a little while?" Maya looked at Dr. Grayson, who smiled encouragingly. "You don't have to discuss anything you don't want to," she said softly. "But anything you do share will help stop the hurt." Maya drew a trembling breath. Then, in a voice so quiet they had to lean in to hear, she began to speak. "There was never a boyfriend," she said. "My dad, he told me to lie. He said if anyone found out, they'd take the baby away and it would be my fault. He said nobody would believe me anyway." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "He started hurting me a long time ago after my mom died." Her voice broke, and for a moment, she couldn't continue. Dr. Grayson gently rubbed her back while Officer Riley waited patiently. "He kept me home from school," Maya finally said. "He told people he was homeschooling me, but mostly he just kept me locked in the house. I wasn't
allowed to talk to neighbors or go anywhere alone. He said the world was dangerous, but really, it was him."
The CPS worker, Mrs. Benton, jotted notes quietly, her face lined with sorrow. Officer Riley asked, "Maya, can you tell me when you first realized you were pregnant?" Maya shuddered. "A few months ago, I started getting sick every morning. I asked him if I was sick from the flu, and he just laughed. Said it was a blessing. Said it was our secret." The room was silent except for the steady beeping of the monitors. Dr. Grayson fought to keep her expression neutral, though inside rage churned. How many times had she treated patients without realizing a child nearby was living in a private hell? Officer Riley placed a comforting hand near Maya's arm without touching her. "You're incredibly brave," she said. "And you're not alone anymore. We're going to make sure he can never hurt you again." Maya sniffled, nodding slowly. "I want to keep the baby," she whispered. "This isn't the baby's fault." Mrs. Benton smiled softly. "That's a big decision, Maya. We'll make sure you have all the help and support you need." A few hours later, after police had formally charged David Mullen with multiple felonies, including sexual assault of a minor, child abuse, and unlawful imprisonment, and after hospital social workers had created an immediate protection plan for Maya, Dr. Grayson finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. She sat beside Maya's bed, watching the monitors, feeling exhaustion seep into her bones. Maya had drifted into a light, restless sleep, her small hands resting protectively over her belly. Dr. Morales entered quietly and handed Dr. Grayson a printout of test results. "She's severely anemic," Morales said in a low voice, "and malnourished, but with proper prenatal care and nutrition, she and the baby both have a fighting chance." Dr. Grayson looked down at Maya, a mixture of admiration and heartbreak swelling in her chest. "She's stronger than anyone realized," she murmured. As the hospital settled into its nighttime rhythm, Mrs. Benton returned, smiling warmly. "We have a temporary foster placement arranged with a maternal care home here in Asheville," she said. "They specialize in supporting young mothers, but Maya asked if you could stay with her until morning." Dr. Grayson blinked, throat tightening. "Of course," she said, voice thick with emotion. The hours passed slowly. Dr. Grayson sat in the vinyl chair by Maya's bedside, holding her hand through the quiet darkness. Once, around 3 a.m., Maya awoke, eyes wide and scared. Dr. Grayson leaned closer and whispered, "You're safe, sweetheart. No one will ever hurt you again." Maya squeezed her hand, then drifted back to sleep. At dawn, golden light filtered through the hospital blinds. Nurses changed shifts. The monitors beeped steadily. Maya stirred and opened her eyes. She looked up at Dr. Grayson and for the first time smiled, small, tentative, but real. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up on me." Dr. Grayson leaned forward, brushing a strand of hair from Maya's forehead. "You saved yourself, Maya. You were brave enough to trust someone. That's the hardest thing of all." Outside the window, the city of Asheville stirred awake, people sipping coffee, children preparing for school, traffic humming along the streets, life moving forward. As the day began, Dr. Grayson stood up, stretching stiff limbs, and prepared to help Maya start a new chapter. One filled not with fear, but with hope, dignity, and the love she had been denied for so long. Maya's journey would not be easy, but she would not walk it alone. She had people who believed in her now, and sometimes that was all it took to change everything. Dr. Grayson gathered her coat and stepped into the hallway just as Officer Riley arrived to escort Maya to her new care home. Before leaving, Maya turned one last time, her hand resting on her belly, her face lit with quiet determination. "I'm going to be okay," she said firmly, voice steadier than Dr. Grayson had ever heard it. As Dr. Grayson watched Maya leave, surrounded by the protective network of people who cared, she felt a profound sense of peace. She had followed her instincts. She had fought through fear, red tape, and protocol. And because of that, a young girl and the child she carried now had a future. Sometimes being a doctor wasn't just about diagnosing diseases or prescribing treatments. Sometimes it was about listening, about noticing the smallest cry for help hidden behind downcast eyes, about choosing every single day to see what others might miss. As she returned to her small clinic later that morning, Dr. Grayson paused at the doorway, breathing in the crisp mountain air. Today, like every day, she would show up. She would stay vigilant, and she would remember Maya, the tiny warrior who had reminded her why she had chosen this path in the first place. This story teaches us that true compassion demands vigilance, courage, and action. It reminds us that danger often hides in plain sight, masked by familiarity and silence. Trusting instincts, asking the hard questions, and refusing to look away can save lives. It also shows the incredible resilience of those who suffer quietly and the life-changing power of offering help without judgment. In a world that often prizes speed and surface appearances, real healing begins when we slow down, listen deeply, and have the courage to act when others hesitate.